Hey guys, I'm Marcus. I work as a sound designer and producer, and I also release my own music. And today I'm going to be checking out this, the Aeroband Smart Guitar. Now it kind of seems like this is three products in one. It's a standalone instrument with built-in sounds and speakers, so you can use it without being connected to another device. It has a 1/4" output, so we can hook up to an amp or an interface for recording. And most interestingly, for me at least, it has a MIDI output, so we can use a kind of guitar format to control synths and software instruments. There's a lot to cover, so I'm going to go grab a coffee and I'll pass you over to VoiceOver Marcus for the unboxing.
So it actually came in a way smaller box than I was expecting, and that's because it is shipped in two separate pieces. You have the neck piece, and then you have the body piece. Everything's packaged really nicely in this kind of thick foam, so there's no chance of it getting damaged during shipping. And you could also use this box to transport it in the future if you wanted to. In addition to the guitar itself, you also get this accessories pack, which includes a USB Type-C cable for connecting to your computer, a screwdriver which is used for changing strings or adjusting string tension, a box of plectrums, and finally you have some chord stickers for beginners, the warranty card, and the user manual.
So as you saw in the unboxing, the Aeroband guitar breaks down into two pieces. You've got the neck, and then you have the body. And then connecting the two is really simple. There's just a groove in the top of the body here. If we line up the neck with that groove, we can then push, and it clicks into place. Feels really solid. There's no kind of wiggle room or play in the neck connection. And I can see this feature being really awesome if you're traveling around. Anyone that's traveled with a guitar before knows that it can be a bit of a nightmare. So the fact that you can break this down, it will probably even fit in a suitcase, can be really handy for having something you can reach for when you're traveling. My first impressions of the build quality are really positive. It is a plastic construction, but it doesn't feel cheap. It's got a nice weight to it. The weight of the body is significantly more than the weight of the neck, which is good because you don't have the kind of neck pulling down. It kind of sits very nicely without me having to support it. Overall, positive first impression. So in terms of the design, you have what appear to be real guitar strings here. And if I take off this magnetic cover, you can see the way that they're strung into the bridge, kind of like they would be on a normal guitar. Rather than having actual strings up here, we've got this kind of fretboard, which is all one solid piece with these kind of silicone string replicas on top. So they're fixed down, they don't move side to side or anything, but they do have a little bit of squish, so you can kind of feel like you're actually digging into a string. So I guess this is how it tracks the notes, and then this is how we trigger them. So to turn it on, we just need to hold down this button here for a few seconds. You can hear we get a little welcome melody, and the lights on the side of the fretboard are illuminated. Let's give it a strum. Wow, okay. So I think the speakers are 30 watts. They're really loud. They're filling the room. It's kind of like playing an acoustic guitar, like a loud acoustic guitar, maybe even a little bit louder. Because the speakers are in the body, you kind of get the vibration of the sound through the body of the guitar in the same way that you would with an acoustic instrument. Let me set up a microphone and then I'll record how it sounds in the room for you. And then we'll switch over to the line output and try that as well. Okay, so I've got a mic set up. Unfortunately, most of my mics are being used on another project at the moment. I've only got this ribbon mic, which isn't necessarily the best tool for the job, but hopefully it will give you a sense of how it sounds in the room. Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. I think, especially considering this is a purely electronic instrument, the way it responds is really quite natural. If you dig into the strings harder, you get a kind of louder, brighter sound as you would on an acoustic guitar. And it responds to the softer playing nicely as well. Yeah, quite impressed. Let's try switching over now to the line output and hear how that sounds. The Aeroband guitar has a bunch of built-in sounds, and you can cycle between those sounds by pressing the tone button here. So I really like the Martin acoustic that I've been playing so far, but there's another acoustic model, some electrics, a nylon string acoustic, a piano, bass, even a banjo. I'm going to select one of the electric guitar sounds now and try running it through some effects to see how it responds. To see how it responds. Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. I think, especially considering this is a purely electronic instrument, the way it responds is really quite natural. If you dig into the strings harder, you get a kind of louder, brighter sound as you would on an acoustic guitar. And it responds to the softer playing nicely as well. Yeah, quite impressed. Let's try switching over now to the line output and hear how that sounds. Another feature that I really like is that we have these buttons up here on the headstock, which will allow us to transpose the fretboard up or down. So no more messing around with capos, we can just do it here on the guitar itself. So let's say I want a capo on the 4th fret. I just press this. You can see that the fret markers illuminate to let us know how far we've transposed, and then I essentially have a capo on the 4th fret without needing one. There's also a load of alternate tunings, open tunings that you can access through the app. I'll show you that a little bit later. The Aeroband guitar also features some built-in drum loops. We can just press this button here next to the power button to start them. It'll count you in with a little intro, and then you can play along. And then if you press it again, it'll do a little outro. Really nice to have just for playing around and practicing. If you're connected via a cable, those sounds will go over the cable, and if you're using the speakers, everything will come through the guitar itself. Okay, so now we've explored the inbuilt sounds, let's move on to what I found most interesting about this, and that's the MIDI capabilities. Let's get connected up to my DAW and start controlling some software instruments. The Aeroband guitar is a fully class-compliant MIDI device, so setup should be nice and easy. I'm just going to grab my USB-C cable and connect that up here. Then in your DAW, you just need to make sure you've enabled it as a MIDI device. I'm using Reaper, so I'm just going to go into my MIDI settings, find it in the input list, and make sure that it is enabled. Okay, let's start off with something really simple. I've just loaded up an acoustic piano. Let's see how it responds. Let's try it with something a bit more lead focused. Okay, so that felt really good. I think the tracking of the notes is really accurate. There's no latency or anything like that. You do need to be quite precise and make sure you don't accidentally trigger other strings, but I guess that's to be expected, and that's going to help you develop better technique anyway. I think the best thing now is for me to kind of use this to try and put a piece of music together. I'm thinking something cinematic to start off with, and then afterwards I'll break down what I did. Okay, so that was a lot of fun to make. It was really interesting to write a track purely on the guitar, but control other instruments. I do play the piano as well, but I find that I have these same kind of ruts and habits that I fall into when I'm writing on the piano. And writing on the guitar means I'm exploring different voicings and kind of writing things that would never naturally come to me on a piano. So that was really fun. The tracking was great. The song starts off with this kind of melodic stack, so I'm using a bunch of instances of different plugins, a couple of Sky keys, a contact instrument, and a piano by Addictive keys. That gave me this kind of soundscapey, cinematic progression. And then I've also enabled hammer-ons in the Aeroband app, which means that I'm able to tap that lead line on top, which was another interesting way to write. It's also worth me mentioning the mute function here. So if I strum, those notes will continue to play, but I can mute them by just tapping this touch strip on the bottom of the bridge here, which is really useful for controlling kind of the length of notes and stuff. And then on top of that, I played a contact instrument called soft acoustic guitar with some nice reverb and delay for a top line. I also enabled slides in the Aeroband app to get a more kind of realistic response. Then I'm using an Equator 2 patch to add some choirs. And then finally I have this nice kind of arpeggiated lead from Arturia's Pigments. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now let's try doing something maybe a little bit more electronic, a bit housey. So that was a lot of fun. There's something quite amazing about controlling these big, powerful electronic instruments, but through strumming a guitar. It's kind of weird, but really fun at the same time. The idea for that track came from the initial kind of arpeggiated synth, which is a serum patch, so I can just play a chord. And I get this nice arpeggiation, so that's where the initial idea came from. And then I added this big, powerful bass line. Then over the top of that, I added this nice kind of textural, weird, atmospheric melody. Gave it this spooky kind of atmospheric effect. And then finally, I added this vocal chop using Exhale by Output.
The Aeroband app allows us to customize the playing response to our preferences. We can enable slides, hammer-ons, and open string hammer-ons. We can explore alternate tunings, like open tunings, and these string settings are also really useful. We can adjust the sensitivity and the velocity ranges. I found dropping the sensitivity really useful when controlling MIDI instruments to prevent mistriggers. We can adjust the brightness of the fret markers, and we can also enable other options like fret noise for certain guitar models. The app also has a load of songs that you can play along with, and even some lesson content for learning to play.
Okay, so that was the Aeroband guitar. I've really enjoyed checking this one out. I think the guitar features are really nice to have, but for me the main selling point is the MIDI capability. I've used a bunch of MIDI guitars in the past, but they all suffer with kind of latency and tracking reliability issues, and that means that I don't end up reaching for them when I'm making music. This was one of the best that I've used. The tracking and latency were great, and it gave me a lot of new ideas writing on a guitar rather than on a keyboard. I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.